Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy. This is one that we've wanted to get to for a long, long time now. Of course, you've seen it from the trailer. You can see it right above us. We are here today to talk about Austin Powers' International Man of Mystery, which is the 1997 film directed by Jay Roach, starring the one and only Mike Myers. I actually wondered which video intro we were going to play there. I didn't know if you'd done one with like Austin Powers and the gun barrel or something. I don't even know if that's doable, but here we are today to talk about this. So I feel like we've said this for well, at least the last few weeks. So, of course, we did Casino Royale, the 60s one. And last week we covered Never Say Never Again. So that kind of does it for the unofficial James Bond films. And we wanted a bit of fun towards, like the tail end. We've done the James Bond retrospective. We've done a couple of the other ones. We just wanted some fun, with as the time of recording this, we've just got done watching a very bad film or a very boring film. So it's been a nice pick me up. It's been nice going into the Austin Powers films. And of course, because we're starting with the first one, expect the next two in the upcoming weeks as well. So obviously we're going to have The Spy Who Shagged Me coming next week, and then Austin Powers in Goldmember coming the following week after. But as soon as we started, I mentioned this, as soon as we did Dr. No, From Russia with Love, and especially when we got to Goldfinger, we knew we had to talk about the Austin Powers films. So here you go. Hopefully we don't disappoint. Before we dive into it, over to George with the socials.
Absolutely, guys. So comment below your thoughts on International Man of Mystery in the comments below. Your memories of the film, your thoughts on the film, your thoughts on them spoofing Bond, I guess you could say, because it's something that many films have tried and done over the years, but not many as big as this. So let us know your thoughts. And if you do like these films, if you're a fan, hit that subscribe button. As Chris, we've got a couple more coming your way over the next 2 weeks. Topped off with Johnny English right at the end of it all. They said it's the polite pick, not pick me, but it's like the come down from the Bond stuff. We get to chill out, have a laugh, poke fun at the films, which is exactly the purpose of these. So this is one I think was it when we got to UNO twice, like we discussed it, and I think when we got to UNO twice, like, okay, they're happening, they're going to get done. So that's this is a long time coming, very long time coming. This and if you're also new to the channel and you don't know where you can find us, hit us up on our socials where we have more details of our videos. Twitter at cinema_favvy, facebook.com/cinemasavvy, and letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy. We also have a link to the TeePublic store in the description below. But as you said, kickstarting these reviews, we've got a lot of films happening on the channel at the moment. We're going to go through them all at the end because there's an insane amount of stuff. But before we get to that, I want to ask yourself, with another classic franchise, I guess we can say we're going to. Hard to call it a franchise. What were your memories, maybe with all of them or just this one, if you can sort of go into that? Because I think you've got a lot more than I have.
I guess my memories are going to kind of blend into each of them, to be honest. So I found this out. I dig this out just before we hit live. And this is my original Austin Powers video that I still have. I never actually owned them on DVD, which is very interesting. But I mean, I've had this since I was a kid. And we had this conversation, I think it was a couple of days ago now, how I mean, I clearly wasn't 15 when I watched that for the first time. I wasn't 15 or 12, but, by the age certificates on the other two either. But it was one of those films that, myself and like all of my friendship group and everyone had pretty much seen from a very young age anyway. So it felt like a very accessible film. And I don't know whether I first saw this on TV. I don't know how I would have first heard about Austin Powers, in all honesty. What's interesting is, of course, is that I've been a fan of these films since I was a kid, since I first watched them, absolutely loved them. But I wasn't much of a James Bond fan at that time. I've only really, I would say, become a big James Bond fan since we've done this retrospective this year. So a lot of the jokes I knew it was based on James Bond, obviously. It was poking fun of it. But there were jokes that even now, when I watched this a couple of days ago, that I was picking up. I mean, there's a line in the film, what is it, in Japan, men come first and women come second. I was like, oh, that's a line from You Only Live Twice. So there's, even now I was picking stuff up, or there might be sort of like cast members in the film that I hadn't noticed before. But this was like an absolute staple of like my childhood and like my early teens. Like, absolutely. I would say probably more so The Spy Who Shagged Me. That film was pretty much on like round the clock every single day, or at least every single night. But I did love International Man of Mystery. I would say that it was probably, out of the three, I probably watched this one the least amount of times. And that's not to say that this was a bad film or anything like that. But I'd say as a kid, I just gravitated more towards the other two, especially the second one. But I mean, I love this film. It was quotable. I still, quotes that I still quote with my best friends now. This was an absolute joy to go back to this one. So yeah, this film's been around for a long time with me. But it's weird how I don't remember how I got into it or how I would have first saw it, because I wasn't old enough to go and see the films, I don't think, at the cinema when they came out. And I even didn't see Austin Powers Goldmember in the cinema when that came out, but they were always there. And I think it was a film, actually. I don't know how well it did when it first came out. I think the box office was kind of low in the UK, but it did very well on VHS and DVD and sort of like gained a following from that. So I guess I'm just part of that following.
Yeah, Austin Powers, it's one of those weird films that's just, I think, ingrained into the head. And I mean this is a not watching, I think, status amongst pop culture that anyone can tell you who Austin Powers, and even if they've probably never seen the film, they can tell you who Austin Powers in, or at least know the theme tune. And it's really fascinating with me. So my memories of this, this will be the sort of cover of the three, I guess. I don't have a recollection of what happened to each film, and I haven't seen them since I was a kid. Probably I'm talking 10 plus years, and I've not seen any of these films, which has been amazing to be able to get to, because I've got a cousin who was obviously older than us, and I don't know if you can remember, everyone always talks about what was the first like 18 rated film you saw, 15 rated, 12 rated, all that kind of stuff. And I remember my cousin having a birthday once, and we saw a phone booth. I think I was about 8 or 9, and that was a 15. And that's a big deal seeing that on I think it was on DVD at that point. But that same cousin, I remember watching the Austin Powers films with. That's how I was shown them. I just remember, if anything, the colors and the people, not the story, not what happens, not moments, just vivid images of the people. And I think that's what's always been defining about these films to me. So, obviously you see clips, you see them using GIFs all the time as well. You see them referenced so much. And, I've not had them on video or DVD or anything like that. But revisiting these has been out of not desperation, but once we started that Bond stuff, I was like, okay, got to not jump ahead. I'm going to stay firm and not watch any of these till we get to them at this whatever point of the year it's going to be, because I was so desperate to see them. And my word, it was incredible to go back and I mean, I've seen 2 of them at the time of recording this, but it's pop culture, isn't it? And I think even a couple of years ago on SNL, he returned as Dr. Evil for a sketch to mock Trump. And it was those kind of things where it's all these kind of things that come together. But yeah, I've got hazy memories with it, but just memories. And another one I know I spoke to you about is when you're at primary school over here in the UK, loads of people do like music stuff. I'm not a musician, never did anything, but my sister used to play the clarinet when she was a kid, and there was like like assemblies where the parents come in and they will watch like what all their kids have been doing all year. And this group did the Austin Powers theme, but they wanted to dress up like really like 60s stuff. And when you go back to look at it now, not just talking about their modern culture, it was just like, that's insane to think they were allowed to see the Austin Powers theme. But it was so well known across everyone that, of course, they could do the Austin Powers theme because everyone knew who it was and what it was. And I guess it's just a bit about the context of not knowing what it's truly about until you're older. And, it's one of them where it's just amazing to think they were allowed to do that at primary school. Definitely wouldn't these days.
It's a great theme, like the music that's used in there, like soul bossa nova. I always call it the Austin Powers theme, but it was done by Quincy Jones, who actually, I don't want to spoil it. You might see Quincy Jones in one of them.
I know he's in the third one.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, he crops up in a cameo, in Goldmember, which I thought was pretty cool. But it's such a great theme, and obviously that was a song before Austin Powers, but that song has become synonymous with Austin Powers now. You can't hear that song and not think about him either dancing in the buff in the second film or dancing down the streets of London with a brass band behind him. It's just incredible. And I think this character, wasn't it birthed out of like sort of Mike Myers' SNL stuff? I don't know if he'd already had the character like down, or an idea that sort of eventually evolved into the character of Austin Powers. I think certainly with Dr. Evil, that was a voice or a mannerism on one of his impersonations during his SNL stuff. So and that's kind of like what happened with the Wayne's World films as well. And I know that they have their fans, but I was definitely more of an Austin Powers fan than I was a Wayne's World fan. And to the point where, people are still clamoring for a 4th Austin Powers film. Is it going to happen? There's a thing on Wikipedia here. It says, he's discussed the possibility of a 4th film. I feel like that's been said since 2003 though, and we're still waiting. But, this film sinks or swims on Mike Myers' character. Or characters. He plays 2 in this film, and then he goes on to play even more as the films go on. This is probably one of, even still, and I think it holds up perfectly well now, probably one of the best written comedy films I've ever seen. I think it works as a film on its own, like a fun adventure film with Austin Powers, this larger-than-life character, the mannerisms and the personality he brings to it. But the writing and it being a pastiche, a parody on James Bond, works so astoundingly well. And you can tell as well that Mike Myers probably has a lot of love for that stuff as well. I was doing a bit of reading. I think it said that his father passed away in the early 90s. And after that, he kind of reflected on sort of like the impact his father had on his life, and a lot of the old films or old music that his father sort of got him into, a lot of which was the 60s, 70s stuff. And that kind of helped craft even more the character of of Austin Powers. And there's a lot of moments in there where you can see the references and from like the original Casino Royale film, which we mentioned when we did that review. There's so much in there, but he makes it his own as well. And I actually thought that Mike Myers directed this thing as well, but it was Jay Roach who actually did Meet the Parents and Meet the Fockers, I found out, which I loved those films growing up. I haven't gone back to those, so I don't know how well they hold up now, but it's just a solid film. And honestly, my biggest fear was like going back to this film. I'd probably love it anyway out of nostalgia, but jokes falling flat or it not holding up as well as I remember it, because it is such like, a film that's near and dear to my childhood. It absolutely still holds up by 2021 standards. I think it's just fantastic, really well written.
Yeah, I'm with you on this. That I was a bit curious. I was like, oh, is this one good? Some comedies don't land years after they come out. That's fine. That's normal. Some do, or some just have a very weird mindset of, yeah, it's still funny, but wasn't as funny. But this was one where watching it instantly was just, you're in from the get-go, the opening scene. And there was this moment we spoke about earlier this year. There was a video that went viral from an Australian theme park. And there's a guy that's job is to basically do the Austin Powers dance every day, or however many days he's hired for. And I think when I saw that earlier this year, the hype kicked in. And obviously, Space Jam 2, one of the few good moments is the Austin Powers cameo, which was ridiculous, but it got me hyped again for getting to these films as the months went by. And I think the writing is important. The SNL stuff, I'm glad you mentioned that. From what I've read, I believe he had an act where it was like a parody of the 60s British stuff. And I think he took a bit of that, pushed it forward, and created Austin Powers.
Mm-hmm.
Because straight away, if you didn't know it was SNL, you'd assume it is an SNL sketch. And I think they've done that a lot. You mentioned Wayne's World. So many of the Will Ferrell type films have all been SNL sketches down the years. Even Ted Lasso, which is now an award-winning show, a drama / comedy, started on SNL 8 years ago. And it's insane to think about how I've got older. Obviously, SNL is not big here in England, I'd say. I think you probably know that either. It's not something that's televised here properly. It's never something that was a really big deal on us. Obviously, technically, it's Sunday morning, I guess, when it airs over here, but it's never been something that's had this, not a claim over here, but I just don't think many people are aware of it. And then I think you hit an age and you discover it more. And I think it was when I was probably watching American stuff, you'd hear comedians reference it a lot more, and you realize that how much of an impact SNL has had. But when you get gifts like this from it, that I can imagine the idea. And when you mentioned about the dad as well, I read a couple of things. It just all clicks as to why, because you look at the 60s stuff in these films, just as a jumping in point. It's not like a piss take of this is clearly shot in the 90s and we're pretending it's the 60s. Like the whole like production design and sets. Yes, it's meant to be the hips, the 60s, but it never feels like they're trying to take the piss out of it too much. It just, the 60s weren't as over the top as this.
Yeah.
But it is clearly inspired by, and they're not doing a bad job of bringing in that 60s stuff. And you mentioned the Bond stuff, which is as important, that you got to get the Bond parodies right. And the whole, I don't know, is it the cravat around, what was it called? The neck thing?
I guess it's like a cravat, isn't it? Yeah.
That feels very on Her Majesty's, because obviously, but then I was watching this film, and I'm glad you mentioned the 60s Casino Royale. I thought, we hated that film, both of us, but I thought a lot about the 60s Casino Royale.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the whole, flower era, wasn't it? That whole design and where the sort of the swinging 60s were. And it was just...
Well, there's Burt Bacharach. You've got The Look of Love playing in there again, the song. There's The Revolving Bed, which caught me off guard when I saw Casino Royale, because I thought that was always from this film. So, yeah, there's a lot of references there. You can definitely tell. This is a much better film than that film.
Yeah.
I will say that, but... yeah, it's that reference towards it as well, which I really like. Interestingly, if we're going to talk about another character also played by Mike Myers, which apparently wasn't the intention, but you got the character of Dr. Evil, who's just fucking brilliant. I'd say out of any character out of any of these films, I quote, even to this day, probably Dr. Evil more than anyone else. It's like the $1 billion. Like that's one of them. There's another one in Goldmember, which I'll wait till we get to that one. But apparently Jim Carrey was originally going to be playing Dr. Evil, which, I'm kind of curious to see how that goes over now. But I can't imagine anyone else playing this character. The look and everything, the mannerisms of Mike Myers performing that character. And it's so wildly different as well from Austin Powers, which, you know, just shows Mike Myers' comedic talent with it. But it was offered to Jim Carrey. He was interested, but it clashed with his filming for Liar Liar. And now that we have these two films, I'm so glad that it happened that way, because Liar Liar is probably one of my favorite comedy films as well, which I think you watched for the first time, didn't you? Fairly
early this
recently,
year.
like a good few months ago. Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it. And I'm the same as you, but when I saw about it was almost Jim Carrey, I was like, no, I was like, I can't picture Jim
Wouldn't have
Carrey.
worked.
Everything from the I know it sounds dumb to point the face up, but like the Jim Carrey like chin, and you know, with Dr. Evil, it's the facial expressions, right? That he doesn't really have any. Like, it's very stoic, I guess.
And because
Whereas
he's modeled
Jim
after
Carrey,
like Donald Pleasance's Blofeld
yeah,
from, like, you wouldn't have had that from a Jim Carrey. I think, especially 90s
he would
Jim
have been
Carrey. My God, he would have been zany, larger than life, and I don't think that would have worked for the Blofeld kind of parody they're going for.
exactly, and I think that's what's been amazing for me, because obviously I always think of Liar Liar, when he drinks the water and just the whole come on, that's what Dr. Evil would have been doing, and I can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think by getting him out of my, I think it adds to the fun of it that he's playing both the hero and the villain. I think there's something so great in that for a parody that James Bond is the same guy. Obviously, we'll bring up Spectre when the right video pops up, the brother stuff as well. But it is just one of those where I can't imagine anything being different on this. From even like the Irma Brunt parody and all these other people, everyone was just perfectly cast. There was no person that stood out for the wrong reasons. There was no one that was too over the top, and maybe it's easy to look at it with the 2021 ones, but even like when you got people like Will Ferrell in it, yes, that's a big name now, but in the late 90s, he was breaking through, and SL, he wasn't the big name he is now. And it's amazing to look back and contextually and see where the state of sort of American comedy is like in the 90s. And it's just, I think Dr. Evil epitomizes it. And obviously everyone, the hand thing and the sky, it's just so well done. And what I love about him is not just the whole costume parodying Bond, but he has like the rigid shoulder pads as well. So whenever he stands up, he looks like a robot. And there's just something about his presence where I can't see anyone but Michael Myers playing him. And Jim Carrey, as much as I love him, I'm gonna say it's one of the few times I'm glad I didn't get Jim Carrey in a 90s comedy, because he would have probably stole the film, and I can't imagine him coming back for all three too.
Yeah, that was the thing, because apart from, I mean, he's done sequels now, but like back then, I think he was very much against the idea of sequels. So I wouldn't have seen him, like, unless they paid him a lot of money, which of course they had to for Ace Ventura 2. I don't see it either. And I actually love the supporting cast in this film as well. It's not sort of like a one-man show with Mike Myers. Everyone's great as well. Elizabeth Hurley, probably more of a model back then, I would say, than an actress. Obviously, she's done bits and pieces here and there, but I think she's really good in there as the main female lead. And then it did kind of revive a lot of people's careers as well. Big actors from the 60s as well, with Michael York and, as Basil Exposition, and Robert Wagner as number 2. They all play off each other so well. And you mentioned like Will Ferrell as well. And I wonder if that was one of the reasons that, because he comes back in the second one, and definitely probably has a lot more to do in the second one and gets more of, a chance to be in the limelight. And I don't know if that was, he's got bigger in those last couple of years, let's bring him back. But it's great. And it wasn't just like Will Ferrell, because I obviously knew he was in these films, but there were actors cropping up watching it a second time that I had no idea they were in there. There's a blink and you'll miss it cameo from, and I always forget the actor's name, the guy who plays Mr. Dickovich in Spider-Man 2, one of our favorite characters. And he's there in the film. And I think, did you say Robert Lowe? Did you say was the
Rob Lowe? Yes, who also pops up in the second film as well, which blew my mind watching that today. But the cameos were just, I mean, Rob Lowe, if you're not familiar with him, Chris Traeger from Parks and Rec, if anyone's seen that, I think he was a massive star in the 80s when he was really young. And I think there was a couple of personal things. I think there was like a weird sex tape with his maid or something really random.
Oh, wow.
But he was caught up in a scandal. It didn't damage his career, but he's kind of re-entered in his sort of 40s. I think he went from being like the Wonder Kid boy comedies, and then like Parks and Rec was a massive resurgence, and he's fantastic in that. But
does he play a young number 2 in the second one? I'm trying to place it. Okay, that's it.
That completely blew my mind, because I can't tell if they've dubbed him in the second one or not. But just the supporting cast just added so much to it. The character, I can't remember her name, who's like the Irma Blunt ripoff.
Oh, Frau Farbissina.
Yes, she's amazing. Like every time she like screams something,
Yeah.
and like Dr. Evil would like get like scared and stuff, and she's a spitting image of who she's
Yeah, I
parodying. And
know. Yeah.
with number 2, he's meant to be Largo from, of course, Thunderball. You've got the eye patch and all that kind of stuff, and the parodies are so great with it. And I think what it's doing, I know this is more the film, but with each and every character that it's parodying something from, it just does it in a way that's naturally funny. Like the whole like ridiculous over the top evil organization meetings, like the button to kill them where it's got their names on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just seeing those kind of moments together. It's just one of these bonkers comedies. And I think when you have comedies like this, if the characters don't work, the film's not going to work. You need the most ridiculous characters possible to carry the film, and it does do it in a really good way. And of course, Elizabeth Hurley being in one of them, who obviously does come back in the second film, but you kind of want that. She's the daughter of obviously one of Austin Powers' 60s sort of people. I don't know. Well, they weren't really a partnership, but I guess they probably would have been. I don't know. I was expecting a "You're My Daughter" twist. I'm not gonna lie, it's been so long since I've seen it, but even she was great for her stuff with it. And I just think anyone that got to shoot a scene with him, like, could you just imagine being on set? Just a lot of this film was improv as well, with all of these great actors and comedians, and it just makes you think like, the best thing about comedians is when they're just off the cusp, off the mic, just going for each other, improving. And when you get two going back and forth, it's just amazing at the potential of what it can do. And even a young Seth Green is great.
Yeah.
And this is the whiny son. And it's such an amazing concept as well, his character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say probably Seth Green's character and everything around that is the most 90s part of the film, I would say. He's very much that kind of dude, bro, stoner kind of guy.
But it's such a great top or poster as well. Like, it's the ultimate. And the fact that Nirvana was the piss take of what is the epitome of the 90s in the 90s as it is today. A film today to hype up the 90s, let's look at Black Widow, Nirvana cover.
And like Seth Green looks like, again, like he hasn't aged. It's like he's always been that kind of age to me, even like back then in the 90s. And it's such a great dynamic. You mentioned the improv as well. I didn't know which scenes were improv and written, which I guess, stands testament to how good improvisers they were. I think the woman who plays Frau Farbissina, the bit where she talks about the Lucky Charms and the leprechaun and everything, that was improv, which now I'm thinking about it, I guess I can see that. And one of my favorite exchanges, which they do repeat in the subsequent films, is the whole shh with Dr. Evil and Seth Green. That was apparently all improv as well, which is amazing. I love that. I was actually just Googling because I had an Austin Powers book when I was a kid, which I think I got from like a pound shop. And I couldn't remember what it was called. I've got it here. It's called Shagadelically Speaking, The Words and World of Austin Powers. And you mentioned the bit at the beginning with the buttons for all the different characters when Dr. Evil kills them all. This had those characters in there, and I don't know if it had like a bit of their history or their names or how they got involved in the organization. This was like old school Austin Powers, like Wikipedia kind of stuff. And God, I wish I still had that book. Maybe you can get it off Amazon still. But it was such a great book, and I remember just like combing through that book again and again, cover to cover. I think pages were falling out of it. But it was so great. It was everything. It was like there was an entry on like the Swedish penis enlarger pump, like everything in those films. I think it was at least the first two. I don't know if I think this might have come out before Goldmember actually, so I don't think that had that stuff in there. But I remember distinctly having all the other characters because that was one of the most fascinating things to me. I wanted to pause it, and they all looked like, I think one was like dressed like a doctor or something. One was like a Mexican war general or something. I don't know. I love that stuff. It's so small in the film, but yeah, it was great.
It just adds and even go back to Will Ferrell, the fact he's in a fez as well.
It's like the fake tan.
Yeah, and like you get, I'm not going to say it's a bad thing, but like any comedy like this, there'll be some things that just aren't funny to others.
Yeah.
When you've got a film that's 99% jokes, some things don't land, and obviously it's the whole like, to me it was his delayed death thing, and that's very Will Ferrell, and that's very SNL. But so much of it works for the one or two jokes that don't make. I never care because it's just a part of it, and that probably in America some people find that funnier than some of the things we might find funnier, which I think just always adds that kind of stuff. But I know I want to see more of the world. I don't want to jump on and say give us a 4th film straight away, but if they wanted to, they could. You know, where
I don't know
not
how
just
well it would hold up now. That's well, I
that's
say
the
that, but
problem.
I loved going back to this film. But we've seen recently comedy films from X amount of years, decades, sequels coming out, and they miss the point. So
And it'd have to be perfect, and it
yeah,
still
it
have to
would.
parody. It would need to be a parody of what Bond has become, just to
Yeah.
bring Bond back into it. And there would be potential in something like that. But again, would it work? That's the big question. That if they're gonna, all I'm gonna say, I think Mike Myers is the kind of guy. If they're gonna do it, he'd probably want it to be good, more so than I'm going to do it for the sake of doing it. He doesn't seem the kind of actor that's cash strapped that doesn't pop up.
Mhm.
You know, he's still very in on the comedy. He was in the Sparks Brothers documentary. I think he approved the joke in Baby Driver. Not that he had to do anything for that, but I think he still has a presence. And I think if he wanted to, he'd do it. Maybe who knows? Maybe one day, but it's just so much fun to be in their world because it's so ridiculous. It's so obscene, but it's just such a good parody of James Bond
Mhm.
that it just leaves you wanting more. And my word, it's amazing to know, at this not at this age as a kid, that there were three of them. Because I couldn't imagine if a comedy like this came out today and it'd be are they going to get a new one? I guess the
Mhm.
only recent comedy sequels for new things is Jump Street, right? And even Jump Street was a remake of a TV show from back in the day.
Yeah, and I don't want to talk about the sequels of these films too much because we'll be talking about them in the next few weeks. But the sequels do repeat a lot of jokes, but I actually think, and that's kind of like a sequel thing where they take what worked in the previous one and do it again. But what I will say about the Austin Powers films is even the jokes they repeat from this film, they put like a new spin on them in some way, or like a new scenario where that joke happens. So the joke still lands for me. So I don't know if I'm going to be overly critical of that if, watching the second and third one again. I probably won't be because I've watched those films loads of times and I know them like the back of my hand. So I know what happens in them, but I don't know if at the time people would go, going to see a comedy sequel and just going, oh, well, that's the same joke. They're not showing any new jokes here. And I'm actually trying to think of any recent sort of like comedy sequels that I've seen, not at least on this level. I think 22 Jump Street
22
might be
Jump
the only
Street,
one.
which
There's the
and
Hangover
that's
films, I suppose, if
yeah, I
you're going to sort
guess
of include them.
I got a bit of Austin Powers alumni as well for the next film.
Mhm.
Yeah, past Jump Street, I'm struggling, and Jump Street sequel was exceptionally good. And it should have been an exceptionally great trilogy with a Men in Black crossover, and Sony instead gave us Men in Black International.
Mhm.
So comedies, it's tough with comedies to do sequels because you can get so many great hits that will just never work again. But I think when you're parodying, you got to think in the 90s as well. Bond's only been a franchise for 30 years. When you're parodying something that's already that I don't want to say old, but when you're parodying something that's had 15 films probably around about that point, and it's had its legacy, it's one of the few ways you can carry on parodying that because you've got so much more history to parody. And I guess the fact that we know the next two films, one's parodying the title of The Spy Loved Me, and the other one obviously Goldfinger, it's in safe hands. If they wanted to do it, they could parody any Bond title of the modern era. Just think how insane that is. But yeah, I think it's one of those few films where everything just came together. And as well, I was thinking, I don't know if it's relevant, but GoldenEye came out in '95. That was the return of James Bond. That was back in the limelight. It was a big hit. It was a fantastic film. We loved it on this channel. Go look at our review. But you got to think, for this to come out in '97, I do wonder if there'd always been ideas, and is
Mm.
James Bond dead now? Or did it get to a point like James Bond's back? I've got this great idea for a parody of James Bond whilst it's in the limelight. Because this, in theory, ran in sync with the Brosnan era, which is crazy to think about. But I just think it makes it so much fun knowing that, did the Bond actors watch Austin Powers? Like, I know we'll speak about Daniel Craig and Eric Goldman because he did an interview about it, but I'd just be well curious to know how Eon were with stuff like this.
Well, actually, I was just going to bring that up. I was looking at the date and thinking 1997, and I couldn't remember if there was a Bond film released that year. It would have been
Tomorrow Never
Tomorrow Never
Dies.
Dies, wouldn't it? Yeah, coming around
Yeah.
that time. But yeah, I mean, Bond hype was back. GoldenEye was a massive success, rejuvenated the Bond franchise. So I guess the hype was definitely there. It's very interesting that you'd have this coming out side by side with it as well. So I don't know. Now I'm thinking about all these possibilities of like a Daniel Craig era piss take of Austin Powers, and you'd
It
have
would,
to have
I,
some time travel element to it. Each one of them has, with this one, it's set in the 60s, you time travel, or you just, enough time goes by, you're in the 90s. In the next one, they go back to the 60s, and then it's 70s for gold members. So you'd have to do some kind of time travel thing if you're going to keep with that. But I think there is potential. I think there definitely is potential. And I don't know. Is it best to just leave it as a trilogy? Would you say that Austin Powers is probably one of the best trilogies out there, or at least like best comedy trilogies? I'm trying to think of any other comedy trilogies.
Yeah, I could think of the.
I guess there's Naked Gun trilogy, Hangover.
How many stopped at 3? Because some just take the piss and go on for too long, don't they?
Yeah, I think sure.
Hangover trilogy.
Naked Gun.
We never spoke about the Hangover on the channel. Yeah, I'm sure there might be some more in America. There's a lot of sequels. There's always 2, never a third, for obvious reasons why they don't get to do a third, which will be testament to when we get to talk about the next Austin Powers one, because sometimes the coming back to a beloved comedy doesn't work, but in this case it did.
Absolutely. So should we talk about some of the best moments then? I've got a couple of facts, well, only 2 facts to throw out there, because I don't know if this is going to be one of our like favorite moments, but certainly side characters. Not to bring the whole mood down or anything, but a Random Task, which is fucking brilliant in this film, where he throws a shoe. Absolutely love it.
And it doesn't even hurt him, which is the funniest about it.
I mean, he looks like the guy from like the original. It looks fantastic, but I made the mistake of going through the IMDb trivia page, and it's actually kind of horrifying. So apparently, the guy who played Random Task in this film is serving a life sentence. Apparently in the 90s, I think it was in the 90s sometime, he tortured a 19-year-old girl, got him put in jail, and then they've extended his sentence by 25 years because he killed his cellmate. That's Random Task in this film. So yeah, pretty harrowing stuff. On the less harrowing side of things, which is going to take me into one of my best moments, actually. And I didn't realize there were 2 different cuts of this film. Apparently there's a US cut which removes a couple of scenes. I don't know why, because I don't think the scenes are particularly offensive or anything like that. In fact, they're one of my favorite scenes. It's the steamroller scene. It's when it cuts to that wide shot. It's just the guy's just straight up acting and just screaming his lungs out. And it's that beautiful crossfade transition into the rolling pin. And you're thinking, like, what is going on? Like, where is this joke leading to? And the fact that they show the ramifications for the family is brilliant. The mom of that first family after the steamroller is Lois Chiles, who plays Dr. Goodhead in Moonraker, which I thought was pretty cool. There's a little Bond reference in there. There's probably other like Bond alumni in there as well, but the trivia page was massive. I'm not going through the whole thing, but yeah, I've got like a newfound appreciation for that scene even more now. But that is up there as probably one of my favorite comedy jokes, I think. Other moments, I love the moment where he's at the a casino with Robert Wagner, and he says, what does he have, like 19 or something, does he, or 17? He's like, hit me, I like to live dangerously. And then also,
it's 5.
You have 5, sir. I also like to live dangerously. Absolute perfection. And then I did have a third scene as well to top it off to 3. Let me come back to that one. I'm gonna have to try and think, but honestly, like, there is pretty much every joke in this film lands for me. Some really stupid ones as well, like the sight gags where there's like a really fat worker and a really tall worker, and he says like, I'll take him, you take her, and they come out and like the outfits are perfectly suited. I love stuff like that. I love stupid humor like that. But let me think on that other moment, because I did have another one I wanted to talk about. But how about you? I
absolutely love the dance at the start, and not just because it's the dance is iconic, but it gets you in the mood, right? You want to be in the mood. You want a comedy to start, get you in from the get-go. Find what's funny straight away. Don't make me wait. Just go into the humor. And that opening there couldn't be a more perfect way for them to introduce Austin Powers and what it's going to be about. And I think there's so many great moments. I'm getting the mix of the second one, so I'm going to apologize if I do, because I almost just said one, which is definitely the second one with the his house. But I'm gonna obviously the fembots is a classic scene. I think most people can remember that. But the one that obviously in GIF form is one of the most used GIFs in history now is the 3-point turn when he's trying to turn the thing around.
Oh god, yeah.
He keeps just driving it. And that's what makes it so great. It's something so minor, but it's so relevant. Like when they have these overly elaborate bases, how do these things work properly? And I just love it was as simple as like, it just doesn't work. It's just dumb. And it just makes it so much funnier when you get these small moments. But I also wanted to mention the defrosting scene because because it's just seeing the other pop icons. It's like, I think not Mr. Ice, Vanilla T's in it. And it's like, if you couldn't have been trapped in the 90s more of a one-hit wonder, it was him being in the ice for the entire time with him, and I just love that. I'm pretty sure there was someone else in the ice that's
Oh, Vanilla
probably had
Ice. Yeah.
Vanilla Ice. Sorry,
Yeah.
there was somebody else in the
Yeah,
ice.
there is. Oh God.
Oh, it was it.
Evil
I,
Knievel, is it? If I'm
that was
remembering
it.
rightly. Yeah.
Oh, it's just. I think so many jokes land. It's hard to like pick my favorites from it, but
I remembered
I mean,
my other scene, by the way. The therapy session with Carrie Fisher.
yes. Now that
Yeah.
completely surprised me. I again as a kid, without something horrible to me as a kid, I didn't know what Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill, and Harrison Ford looked like when they were older, because you've got three characters, and my word, when she popped up, I was like, Carrie Fisher, like. It's like Carrie Fisher. Like, I actually got my phone on Google. It's like I'm not losing my plot. It sounds exactly like her. It looks exactly like her, and it's about right for '90s Carrie Fisher. And I was like, wow, it is her. And I think because I've seen her in like other comedies, like as the years went by, like Fanboys was one of them, and I think I've not seen Blues Brothers. No, she's that, but she
She's
did
in
a
like
lot
Harry
of
Met Sally.
cameos.
Yeah.
She did a lot of cameos over the years, and I know she did a lot of script doctoring, and I don't know if she'd have worked in this, but Carrie Fisher being the voice of the therapist was just
Just
amazing.
being a therapist in general. I mean, that's the joke right there, isn't it? Really, but
and then you get the payoff that he had the therapist dissolved, as in the whole thing, which is just his
liquidated.
relationship
They
with
were
his son.
insolent.
Dr. Evil was just perfect. And as well, when you've got this ridiculous villain, right? The fact he has a son is amazing. It's not something you'd expect as well from a comedy villain. It's just the fact, and then that gets obviously a payoff as each film goes by. And obviously, when we find out the mother in the second film as well, it's just got this amazing second story. And I think that goes down to Seth Green being the whiny child, because he's in on it so much. And I think you need someone like that for that film.
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually brought up Dr. Evil's monologue here. Just some of these lines, like you couldn't make this shit up. It's fantastic. So I think that's probably my favorite scene. Actually, is Dr. Evil's monologue where he's talking about his dad. He's like, he would make outrageous claims like he invented the question mark. It's so random. Like it's in the spring we'd make meat helmets. It's like, what is this shit? It's like absolute bonkers, but it's just great. I also love how quickly he comes in as well during that scene where Seth Green's like, I think he's trying to kill me. And Carrie Fisher's like, oh, I'm sure he's not trying to kill you. He's like, no, I am really trying to kill him. It's just like, but he's quite wily like his old man or something. It's just amazing. There's too many scenes to mention. It's the whole film. The whole film's just amazing. Yeah. Honestly, nothing fell flat for me. Stupid stuff as well, like the physical humor where he's beating up on Basil's mom because he thinks it's a man.
The car as well, renaming the Jaguar to a Jaguar.
I love that car. It's a fantastic car. Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely fell in love with this film again. Just like absolute brilliance, and that's always like the dicey thing going back to a lot of these old films, especially an old comedy. Is it going to hold up well? And I was just so glad that it did. So if I was going to move on to my final thoughts, I still love this film. I still think it's one of the best comedy films ever, and I know for a fact that the second one's my favorite. So from whatever I'm going to say for this film, International Man of Mystery, it's going to be cranked up to like 11 by the time we come to next week and talk about that next one.
Absolutely. I think this is a comedy for the ages. I don't think you need to be a Bond fan to appreciate the humor from this film. Being
Case
a Bond
in
fan
point, I wasn't.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just a very funny film anyway. And again, it's a classic. And it's insane that almost 20 plus years have gone by. But the fact that it feels timeless, that it's shot so well, it's mocking the 60s whilst living in the 90s, and now the 90s are slowly becoming a retro era, which is really depressing at the same time. It's amazing to see what everything was like still back then, and I just can't commend it enough. And just going back to Mike Myers as well, the absolute legend that gave us this film, you can tell he does have a lot of love for that era, because he's not mocking the era as such. It's the people from the era, and I think that's the jump. If you want to poke fun at the 60s, you can, but it wouldn't be funny. But he's making the funny moments because of how they would be today, and I think it's just a genius concept. It's one thing to parody a spy, but to make it essentially like a sex fiend involving time travel being frozen for 30 years, it's just genius, and the humor matches its genius. And I think I hate using words like career-defining performance, but Matt Myers has had an incredible career, but it's so hard.
And also Cat in the Hat. But yeah, he has had a fantastic career.
But you just can't look past Austin Powers, can you?
Yeah.
The stuff he's done. And
well, he said it's his favorite character that he's played, like it's his favorite, and it shows.
You can tell,
Yeah.
like you can just tell, not that obviously we know it's like, but I can imagine just him turning up to shows in America as Austin Powers for the sake of it, and he probably could. I don't know if he would, but it's just one of them where it's just, you know, iconic from the get go, and that's worth throwing around a lot these days. But Austin Powers is really a definition of that, and it's amazing to be able to revisit these as well, and also it's accessible. I know that sounds really dumb. Some films from the 90s are starting to become hard to get. These were easy to get. Netflix and Amazon. One should have all three, not split across two. I'm going to add that. A bit like Rush Hour, a bit of nonsense there. But what they need to do is get the trilogy out on Blu-ray, because only the first one's been out, except
Is
a
that
combi
right?
pack in America.
It's only on Blu-ray.
Except a combi pack in America, which is ridiculous. So yeah, if anyone's watching, Mike Myers, get it sorted.
And get a fourth film out as well while you're at it. Why not? I wanted to just throw one really quick thing in there. We talked about like the lace cravat thing earlier in the outfit. We know that was the fashion. When I watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for the first time, Roman Polanski, when they go into the Playboy Mansion,
looks like Austin Powers, and
yeah, it's great.
To hype up what's coming out, House of Gucci coming out in a few weeks. When the set photos started coming out, Adam Driver is in like the all blue Austin Powers suit, not with the cravat.
Oh, is he?
But he looks like 90% he's en route to being Austin Powers. He's got obviously the hair as well.
Maybe he can play Austin Powers in the Dark and Gritty reboot if they do the Daniel Craig era stuff. But yeah, I guess that'll do it for our review on International Man of Mystery. It's always difficult sort of reviewing a comedy, because otherwise you sort of like list joke after joke after joke. But we love these films, and we want to hear from you guys as well. Let us know what you think of Austin Powers International Man of Mystery, or any of the Austin Powers really. But we will be back next week with Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me. That's going to be Tuesday the 16th of November. I can't wait to watch that one again. I'm already sort of like planning ahead of when I want to watch it, because I'm eager to get onto the next couple of Austin Powers films. But yeah, let us know what you think of these films, any of your favorite jokes or any of your memories surrounding the Austin Powers films. Please do share that. We've got a lot of stuff coming out. It's actually kind of terrifying and traumatizing how much stuff we've got coming out on the channel. We have got massive franchise reviews coming out. We've got a big month in December, and it isn't letting up anytime soon. So I guess in terms of reviews, what else do we have coming up? What else do we have scheduled?
At the time of this coming up, we're currently in the Ghostbusters film. So yesterday would have been the very first one, the 1984 classic. More SNL alumni, which we do get into a bit of an SNL discussion on. So check that out. And that's obviously building up to Ghostbusters Afterlife. We'll be reviewing Ghostbusters 2 next Monday and Afterlife the following Monday. What else do we have? There's been an Arsene Wenger documentary for those into football, Arsene Wenger Invincible, going into one of the greatest managers that ever lived, looking at his football career. That's just come out on the channel. It's so crazy planning ahead because it's so hard. Next Wednesday, we have the Spider-Man stuff starting up, which we'll go into a little bit more depth on. Go follow the socials when we bring them up. I'm going to hand over to Chris for one that we are a lot more aware of and already well in depth on, to talk about the Peter Jackson retrospective.
Absolutely. I was just double checking if this was the right one, because we are pre-recording this and my mind's all over the place with dates. But this upcoming Thursday, we have the Brain Dead review. That's going to be Thursday, the 11th of November at the slightly later time of 10 p.m. GMT. We've been going through all of Peter Jackson's films. We are going through all of Peter Jackson's films in his filmography, and we're at his third feature with Brain Dead. Me and Tate cover those. Neither of us have seen the film, so you'll be discovering our review firsthand on that Thursday. They've been really good fun going through there, and very educational as well. As a big fan of the Lord of the Rings films, it's quite eye-opening to see where that director started from. So, as mentioned, Brain Dead review this upcoming Thursday. Check it out if you're a Peter Jackson fan, or if you're just at least a bit curious about what we have to say on the film, really. But as I mentioned, we have so much content coming out. As you witness firsthand, even I'm having a hard time keeping track of all the stuff we've got coming out. So the best way is to follow us on all of our social medias. They're going across the bottom of the screen there now. Twitter at cinema_savvy, Facebook and letterbox.com/cinemasavvy. We'll have times, we'll have everything planned out, for all the franchises we just mentioned and more. So check there for dates and everything like that, so you can stay in the loop with what we've got coming out. That being said, I think that covers absolutely everything for right now, at least anyway. So thank you very much to everyone that's watched and hopefully commented along as well. And we'll see you guys on the next video. Take care, everyone.